They said she was just a male clerk, quiet, polite, always on time. The kind of woman you'd pass in line at the grocery store and never think twice about. No one at the Willow Creek post office knew much about her, except that her name was Lena Carter. She was 28, and she worked hard. But if you looked close enough, you might have noticed the way she scanned every face before smiling, or how her hand sometimes trembled when the mail truck backfired outside. There was something behind her calm eyes, something weighty, the kind of silence that doesn't come from shyness, but from memory. Make sure to like and subscribe if you agree that true heroes rarely call themselves that. They just keep showing up, quietly, even after the world stops clapping for them. It started on a Wednesday. The sort of day no one remembers. Half clouds, half sunlight. The kind of midweek hum when even the coffee tastes tired. Lena had just clocked in, tying her dark hair back beneath her blue cap, sorting through the first tray of mail that had come off the truck. To everyone else, it was just another day of packages, zip codes, and signatures. But to Lena, every envelope meant something. Somewhere out there, a mother was waiting for her son's letter from base. Somewhere, a veteran was still fighting a battle that didn't make the papers. She never said it out loud, but she felt it. That quiet current running beneath the daily routine, the unspoken web of connection that the mail carried across lives. She'd been there almost a year, and the small-town rhythm had finally become comfortable. The other clerks, Gina, a talkative single mom with a heart of gold, and Pete, the office joker, liked her, even if they teased her about being a mystery. Lena would just smile, keep her head down, and focus on her sorting. She wasn't hiding anything, not exactly. She was just done explaining herself. The bell over the post office door jingled, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a group of Marines, 3 of them, laughing and talking as they carried in a few heavy boxes. Their presence filled the small room instantly. Uniforms tend to do that. Gina whispered something about how good they looked in dress blues, and Pete grinned, nodding. Lena didn't look up right away. Her hands moved automatically. Stamp, slide, sort, but something in her chest tightened. One of the Marines, tall, early 30s maybe, approached the counter. He had that easy confidence of someone who'd seen too much and survived it. His name tag read Reynolds. He greeted the clerks politely, explaining that they were sending care packages to some of their deployed brothers. His voice was steady, warm. Then, as Lena stepped up to help, something changed. He froze. His words caught mid-sentence, like a radio losing signal. His eyes widened as if he'd just seen a ghost. The room, once filled with chatter, went still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hesitate between seconds. Lena blinked, unsure what to do. "Sir, do you want these sent priority or standard?" she asked, her voice professional, even. Reynolds didn't answer. His gaze locked on her name tag, L. Carter. A faint tremor passed over his face. Then he whispered it, almost too quietly to hear. "Sabre Wing, is that you?" The words dropped into the silence like a stone into deep water. Every head in the room turned. Gina frowned, confused. Pete looked between them, not getting it. But Lena, she went pale. Her eyes flickered, her breath caught. It was as if a door she'd welded shut years ago had just burst open. "Excuse me," she managed, though her voice trembled now. Reynolds took a slow step forward, disbelief softening into something like awe. "It's you, Helena Carter. Sabre Wing." He said it not as a question, but as a revelation. The other Marines looked between them, whispering. The postal clerks glanced at each other, unsure whether to say something or stay quiet. Gina finally broke the silence. "Wait, Sabre Wing. What's that?" Lena's mouth opened, then closed. Her hands shook slightly, and she pressed them against the counter to hide it. "I think you have the wrong person," she said, but her tone lacked conviction. Her eyes darted toward the back door, like she might escape if she could just breathe long enough to move. Reynolds shook his head slowly. "No mistake. You pulled us out of a burning LZ outside Kandahar. 2019. I remember your voice over the comms. You were hit, but stayed on the stick. You saved 3 of us." Silence. The sound of the ceiling fan was suddenly deafening. Pete's joking grin faded. Gina's hand covered her mouth. Even the customers waiting in line had stopped moving, caught in the invisible gravity of the moment. Lena didn't respond. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just stood there, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the space between them. Finally, she whispered, "That was a long time ago." Reynolds nodded, His voice softer now. Still feels like yesterday to us. Someone dropped a pen. It clattered loudly on the counter. No one moved to pick it up. For the rest of that minute, maybe longer, no one spoke. Reynolds finally stepped back, as if realizing how surreal this must feel. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Didn't mean to bring up memories like that. I thought you were gone." Lena looked at him for a long time. Then she said quietly, "In some ways, I am." And then she turned back to her tray of envelopes, methodical, precise, like nothing had happened. But everyone in that post office knew something had changed. The air itself felt different, heavier somehow, sacred even. Gina was the first to whisper it. She was in the Marines? Pete nodded slowly, still staring at Lena. "Not just in. Sounds like she was someone big." Reynolds gave a faint, almost reverent smile. "She was a pilot. One of the best. Sabre Wing wasn't just a call sign. It was a legend." No one laughed. No one made a joke. Behind the counter, Lena's eyes flickered toward the flag hanging by the doorway, the one she used to salute every dawn from a cockpit somewhere far from home. Her reflection in the glass looked older than 28 for a moment. Not by years, but by weight. The moment passed. She took a deep breath, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and said softly to herself, "Just mail, just letters." But deep down, even she knew, nothing about this day was ordinary anymore. Long after the Marines left the post office, the silence lingered. Even the hum of the sorting machines seemed quieter that afternoon. Lena worked through the motions, but her mind wasn't there. Each envelope, each printed name, blurred into flashes of sand, smoke, and rotor blades. By closing time, she could barely steady her hands enough to lock her register. That night, she sat in her small apartment above the bakery, lights dimmed, a single cup of tea cooling on the table. From the shelf beside her bed, she pulled down an old box, metal, dinted, and covered in dust. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside were pieces of a life she'd buried, a tarnished set of aviator wings, faded photos of her squadron, and a folded flight patch embroidered with her old call sign, Sabre Wing. Her breath caught as her thumb traced the edges of the patch. Memories surged like static, the echo of radio chatter, the blinding light of a desert morning, the thump of rotor blades over smoke. She'd been 23 when she joined the Marines, a helicopter pilot too stubborn to quit and too loyal to stay down. The day everything changed, she'd been on a medevac run near Kandahar. Her crew had taken heavy fire on approach. When the engine went out, the bird dropped fast, too fast. She remembered shouting over the radio, the controls jerking violently, the sound of metal tearing apart. But somehow, she kept it level long enough to crash land near a ridge. Flames. Shrapnel. Screams. She dragged 2 men out herself, another with the help of a medic. She never remembered blacking out, only the faint crackle of a voice saying, "She's still in there," before everything went white. When she woke in Germany weeks later, she learned that her crew had survived, but the mission had been classified. The medal recommendation, the reports, all buried under red tape. Her injuries ended her flying career, and the PTSD made it impossible to stay in uniform. So she walked away quietly. No ceremony, no goodbyes. In the years that followed, she reinvented herself. Small towns, simple jobs, new names on forms. Anything to feel normal again. Working at the post office made sense to her. It was still about connection, still about bringing people hope across distance. But no one there needed to know what she'd been. She was tired of explaining what bravery cost. The next morning, she thought about calling in sick, but showed up anyway. The first person she saw was Captain Reynolds, waiting outside the post office with a letter in his hand. He smiled faintly when he saw her. "Didn't mean to spook you yesterday," he said. It's not every day you meet a ghost." Lena gave a small, dry laugh. "Guess that makes 2 of us." He hesitated, then handed her the letter. "I thought you should see this. It was supposed to be delivered years ago, but it got lost in the shuffle. Someone found it in the archives last month." She unfolded it carefully. The paper was yellowed, creased, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable, a Marine Corps general. It was a commendation for valor, citing her actions under fire and naming her as the reason 3 Marines came home alive. She read it twice, then lowered the page, eyes glassy but steady. Reynolds said quietly, "We've been trying to find you for years. Everyone thought you'd moved overseas, or," he stopped himself. Lena folded the letter again and handed it back. "Keep it," she said. "I already know what happened that day. I don't need a paper to remind me." But Reynolds shook his head. "Then at least let us remember for you." For the first time in a long time, she didn't know what to say. When he left, Lena watched him disappear down the street. Another soldier moving on with his life. She stood there in the morning sun, the letter still in her hands, the air cool and clean around her. She didn't feel like a hero. She never had. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible either. Inside, the post office clock struck 9. She straightened her uniform, tucked the letter gently into her pocket, and began sorting mail again. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do, after the war ends, is keep living quietly, even when no one's watching. By the end of the week, word had spread quietly through the post office and into the town. No one said it outright, but whispers moved faster than mail. The quiet girl behind the counter wasn't just Lena Carter. She'd once been Sabre, a Marine pilot who'd saved lives and disappeared into ordinary life. But if Lena noticed the stares or the sudden warmth in people's greetings, she didn't show it. She kept doing what she always did, sorting letters, stamping parcels, smiling politely. Routine was her shield, and she built her peace around it. Friday morning, the post office was busier than usual. A delivery van idled outside, and a line stretched out the door. Lena was halfway through helping a customer when she saw the uniform again. Captain Reynolds, flanked by 2 Marines, stepped inside. But this time, there was something different about him. He wasn't carrying boxes or letters. He was carrying a small wooden frame wrapped carefully in brown paper. He waited until the line cleared, then walked to the counter. Lena's co-workers watched in silence, sensing this wasn't a normal delivery. "This belongs to you," he said quietly. He set the package down. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside was her old unit patch, Sabre Wing Squadron, preserved behind glass, along with the commendation letter she had tried to give back. At the bottom, engraved on a brass plate, were 5 simple words. "You brought them home, ma'am." Lena stared at it for a long moment. Her throat tightened, but she didn't cry. She just whispered, "I don't deserve this." Reynolds' voice softened. "With respect, ma'am, that's not your choice to make." He straightened then, shoulders squared, eyes forward, and saluted. The other Marines followed. 3 pairs of hands raised to brows in perfect silence. The kind of salute that isn't about rank or ceremony, but gratitude. No one in the room moved. Gina wiped her eyes quietly behind the counter. Pete stood straighter than anyone had ever seen him. Even the customers, unsure of what they were witnessing, seemed to feel the weight of the moment. Lena hesitated. Then, slowly, her hand rose. It had been years since she'd saluted anyone, but muscle memory never forgets. She held it there, steady, eyes locked with Reynolds. For a heartbeat, she wasn't a postal clerk anymore. She wasn't hiding behind a name tag. She was Sabre Wing again. The pilot who refused to let her crew die, the woman who flew into fire and came back through it. And then it was over. Reynolds dropped his salute and stepped back. "We just wanted to say thank you," he said quietly. She nodded, her voice soft but certain. "Then thank you for remembering." He smiled, gave a small nod, and left with his men. The door chimed once as they disappeared into the afternoon. The room stayed still for a moment longer, as if time itself were catching up. Then Gina whispered, "You never told us." Lena exhaled, a long, trembling breath, and smiled faintly. Some stories aren't meant to be told, just lived. The rest of the day passed quietly. The rhythm of mail and conversation returned, but something in that small post office had changed. There was a deeper respect in the air, a kind of reverence that lingered long after closing time. That evening, as the sun bled orange through the windows, Lena locked up and stood alone by the flag outside. It flapped lazily in the evening wind, edges worn but proud. She looked at it the way only someone who's carried it through dust and fire could. Then she reached into her pocket, unfolded the letter, and read it one last time. The final line said simply, "For actions above and beyond the call of duty." She smiled, not with pride, but peace. Then she tucked it away and whispered to the wind, "Above and beyond, that's enough." As the door closed behind her, the flag caught the last light of day, and for a brief second, it looked like wings.